That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The British Constitution provides that taxation and representation shall go together. Therefore, women taxpayers are entitled to vote.
I have a dream today. Let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true.
Well, hot damn. Here we are, episode 10 of the Only Human podcast. Milestone for us. So welcome aboard on our continuing journey where we kind of rethink the conventional, diving into some controversial topics from time to time, but always we're challenging the status quo here. This episode is called The 5 Biggest Myths About Human Performance. And what we're going to do is we're going to dare to question some long accepted gospels, in air quotes here, about human performance, things that we've all been led to accept as, really non-negotiables, right? So I'm your host, Tony Kern, and together we're going to explore some deeply ingrained beliefs about success and achievement. How the things that we've been told, are they really pillars of excellence, or have maybe we've been overvaluing some of these things for a while? Let's unravel these concepts, challenge a few preconceptions, and maybe in the process learn a little bit more how to close that gap between who we are and who we're capable of becoming. So today, we're going to look at 5 commonly held positions about what it takes to really make it. Make it personally, make it socially, make it professionally, but how do we really achieve success? Specifically, we're going to talk about our reliance or maybe over-reliance on experience, on natural talent, the ability to multitask, maybe credentialing through formal education and training, how important that is or not. And my personal favorite, that long, hard work hours, we're going to outwork everybody else, right? We're going to show you how each of these can derail us, maybe even leading to premature burnout, right? Or stress, anxiety, some of the things that impact our mental health. Or, on the other hand, if they're applied in moderation, how they can drive us to new levels. Alrighty then, let's start some myth busting. You know what? We're going to do all this and more in 60 seconds after a quick word from our sponsor.
Have you ever finished the latest bestseller on habits or personal performance and asked, yeah, okay, but how? All the improvements you visualize while reading the books require one thing to achieve in your own life: deliberate practice, a new way of focusing attention inside the routine to drive consistent improvement with every experience. Focused on getting the biggest impact from your career development opportunities, the Deliberate Practice of Professionalism course from Convergent Performance teaches you the steps and requirements to achieve improvement and mastery of your targets. Discover how deliberate practice can springboard your improvement efforts, no matter what they might be or your current skill level. Join us on our website at convergentperformance.com and click the link for e-learning to sign up for this exciting program today.
So let's kick this off with our Blue Threat Proverb of the Week. Most of you are used to that by now. It's Blue Threat Proverb number 4. Experience is overrated. Sometimes those of us that have been around for a while and done a lot of different things assume that our experience in the past is preparing us for our challenges in the present, or maybe even adequately preparing us for any future challenge we might face. We're going to look a little deeper at this, but I'll tell you from experience, experience is not always accompanied by wisdom or good judgment or solutions or problem solving. Sometimes all this gray hair comes all by itself, unaccompanied by those other things. Sometimes we'll have experience, but what we learn from that experience are all the wrong things. We learn that we can get by with some of these attributes that we're going to talk about here today. We learn that success in the past is a natural prediction of success in the future. The weird thing about all of these so-called truths, in air quotes for those of you that are listening, is that they all have a grain of truth to them, but they also have a whole lot of things that they don't tell us. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this one. Number one on our list, that experience is what you really need to make it. The first myth. How crazy does it make you when you see a job advertisement out there that says, company looking for an innovative leader, and then in the job requirements, you look down a little bit and it says, must have 5 or 10 years of experience in a similar job. So what they're basically saying is, we want new ideas, but we want you to come out of the mold that doesn't produce new ideas. So that's crazy. That's just crazy. There's a few very specific things that we can use to kind of myth bust. I'm going to have trouble saying that all day, so I'm going to have to come up with a new term that we can use to deflate the balloon that is experience equals wisdom or judgment or success. The first one is that experience can give us a false comfort. Sometimes experience leads us into a comfort zone that can kind of sideline or deter us from exploring a new approach or a new idea or adapting to change, right? Well, this worked 10 years ago in this environment, so it'll probably work today. Always reminds me of that famous quote, you can never step into the same river twice, because it's not the same river and you're not the same person. So we can be led into this false comfort zone that what we know already is going to be enough for what we need to know in the future. Which leads us to point number 2 in this, I'm going to try it, myth busting of experience equals success endeavor. Outdated methods. Right? When we rely on past experience, we can cling to our tools that we use, the approaches that we use, and that ignores recent innovations or maybe more efficient approaches. I mean, one of the things that, I'm an old school writer. I still use my, let's see if I can pull it up here, my yellow legal pad. I write on both sides, but I'm too lazy to pull the pages out. So I'll write on one side and then I'll fold over the page, and my thoughts about the first side are written on the upside down at the bottom of the second page. It's crazy, but it's how I've been doing it, since the 1970s. Okay? And so I'm really reluctant to change. I mean, I remember when I bought my first word processor and gave up, I'll even go back further, when I bought my first electric typewriter and gave up my manual typewriter. I remember when I bought my first word processor and I thought, who would need something like this, let alone a PC? And here I am today with about 8 artificial intelligence apps that are giving me ideas and working when I'm not working. So methods that I've used in the past, I still have them, but I'm embracing the new innovations to be able to drive more efficient approaches. So that's number 2, outdated methods based on our experience. Number 3 is, and it's tied closely to the first one, a false comfort zone. Number 3 is overestimation of our abilities. As we accumulate experience and we accumulate successful problem-solving events, or maybe getting promoted, or maybe, in my case, publishing some books and starting new businesses, we can tend to believe that, man, we've got what it takes, right? And when experience leads to overconfidence, where you and I can begin to overestimate how good we really are, we haven't really maybe kept track of what the competition's doing around us, right? What that next brilliant generation that's coming up, and I don't care what people say about millennials or Gen Z or anything else, they're brilliant people inside those generations, and they are coming after us, right? So if you kind of view the world in a competitive mode, like I do, based on my experience, the minute you start to overestimate your ability is the time you're going to get passed up. So long time ago, I used to be an athlete, right? I kind of consider myself still an athlete, but a very old one. I haven't picked up pickleball yet, but man, I'm starting to look at it. But I used to be a basketball player, among other things. And I came from a small town, and we played other small towns. And I was a pretty good basketball player. I got by with my natural talent, which was, quickness and ability to shoot a mid-range jump shot. When I got recruited and went into college basketball, I realized there were 100 players that were not recruited that just were great athletes that were every bit as good as I was. I had gone from being a big fish in a small pond to being not only a little fish in a medium-sized pond, but there were people all over campus that were as good or better. And so I'd overestimated that my talent in one pool of experience competition was going to carry me into another. And I'm telling you what, it took me 2 years to recover from that and get good enough to be able to compete on the level that I should have been able to compete on day one. That cost me a lot of playing time, I promise you that. So that's not to say that experience doesn't matter, right? Far from it. Experience is hugely important. And we should probably counterbalance this by considering how and when it can make a difference for us. So the first thing that experience does for us is it gives us a depth of knowledge, providing that we learn the right lessons from that knowledge, right? It provides an understanding that can really only be gained by banging up against situations in the real world. Places where your natural brilliance doesn't burn through, right? Places where your experience no longer matches the situation, right? It equips us with insights and sort of practical know-how that can be really important in decision-making and problem solving. So as we accumulate experience, if we've learned the right lessons from it, that increases our depth of knowledge to be able to handle some future things. The second, and maybe the most important one in my mind, is that experience gives us better risk estimations, right? We can manage our risks better. We can anticipate where problems might be coming from because we've encountered various scenarios in the past. I remember that first day walking into the gym at college and looking around saying, what are they having, some sort of all-star camp here? Because every one of these guys can dunk and crossover dribble and spin dribble and they play defense like demons. Where did all these people come from? And then I began to realize they came from all over. And there was just a ton of great, smart, hardworking athletes out there that I had never really bumped up against. Since that day, which was quite a while ago, I never underestimate that there's a pool of competitors out there that are equal or greater than I am, right? So I manage those risks a little bit differently now. I think the third thing that experience gives us is the ability to find mentors or people that we can learn from, trusted colleagues and friends, folks that we can share our ideas with, and not only find mentors, but eventually become a mentor. Because what's really cool about this mentor-protege relationship, which I promised before, and I promise you again, we're going to get into deeper with a guest here as soon as I can get her scheduled. But one of the cool things about that is that it's a two-way street. And as we experience a good protege relationship, we recognize what a good mentor looks like, and then we become even a better mentor. So that's both sides of the experience guarantees success equation. I think we've kind of given that a pretty good balance. So let's go to number 2 out of the 5 that we want to discuss today, and that's natural talent, right? Oh, he or she's a natural leader, right? They're a natural problem solver. They're naturally innovative. They're idea people, right? So how does that play out in the real world? So the first thing it does when you say, I'm a natural or she's a natural, is that it undervalues hard work. I'm not even sure what natural means. Does it mean that you're a product of your genetic background, your environmental background, your cultural background? some combination of factors that have brought us together that make us supposedly more likely to succeed because we're naturals. Right? I think if you have that opinion about yourself, you're far more likely to undermine the value and importance of dedication and purpose and focus and perseverance and resilience and resolve and all those things that underpin hard work. So that's number one, the fact that when we consider ourselves natural or somebody else a natural, that we don't have to work very hard at something. Number two is that we often get sort of what I call hardening of the categories, a fixed mindset. This idea that if it doesn't work for me and I'm a natural at this, it must be something that's outside of my inherent capability. There's a lot of things I don't know. I enjoy working on small engines, but I got a carburetor problem in my brain. I can't always figure out the right adjustments. I got a golf cart that's backfiring right now, and I'll pull the top off it and I'll look at it and I'll stare at it for a while. I'm no smarter than I used to be. And I come up against this idea that, God, I'll never be able to work on carburetors. Well, that's not true. Just a little more YouTube studying some schematics and talking to some people a little bit, maybe I can break outside of that. But if I have this idea that somehow I'm either naturally mechanically inclined in this one particular thing or not, then I tend to give up too easily. And the third thing about this idea about natural talent that's not really helpful to us is it ignores the natural skills that you can develop over time, right? Focusing on what you're great at can neglect the importance of continuous learning and development on things you're not great at. Once again, I'll reflect back to the previous podcast where we talked about, do you want to be a narrow, deep river, or do you want to be a wide, shallow river? And know a lot of things about a little or a little about a lot. And the answer is we want to be a wide, deep river, right? And over time, if we get out of this idea that, well, we're just a natural in one thing and we really don't understand this other thing, we're going to come up against problems and we're going to give up too quickly. So natural talent, though, does play a place in the world, right? Natural talent gives us, first of all, an early head start, right? When you're naturally good at something, and there's a whole bunch of literature out on this. I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Howard Gardner, I believe, who wrote about multiple intelligences, some of which I think is crap, but some of it's true. Some people are naturally empathic. Some people are naturally good at art and music. There's no denying that, right? We see at an early age where some people just delve into areas and they start drawing pictures or making music or doing something that you say, wow, that kid's got a natural talent. Let's feed that, right? So it allows these people, when they're recognized early enough, to develop and not only that skill, but confidence in their abilities, right? But once again, the cautionary tale there is let's not become a narrow, deep river. The second thing is the ease of acquiring skills in areas of natural talent. People that are good at something, get excited about something, have a natural inclination to put the work in, right? They may find it easier to develop and refine these abilities. And when they learn how to refine that ability, it can lead to higher levels of achievement in other areas because they apply the same skills and techniques. Now, the third area on natural talent that's kind of, I'll say, the positive side of the coin is I love to witness somebody that is naturally talented at something. I used to live in Colorado Springs and I'd watch people, rock climbing. And some of these people just scramble up these damn near vertical cliffs as if they have no fear of falling, because they don't, right? They have the skills and the natural ability to do these things. And that inspires me. So sometimes you'll witness natural talent and it will inspire you to levels of greatness beyond where you're at. So again, number 2, natural talent, some downsides there, but some positive sides as well. Point on all of these is you can't rely exclusively on any one of them, but there's a lot of nuances about each one of these myths that we're going to bust that are important to us. So the third big myth that we want to take a look at is this idea that we can juggle a lot of things, right? We can multitask. And when we multitask, we can get good at this, that, and the other thing, and we can do it all simultaneously. Well, the science of the matter says nobody actually multitasks. Your brain can only do one thing at a time. And that one thing gets blurred a little bit because when we switch quickly from one thing to another, when we're juggling tasks, when we're multitasking, our brain gets caught up in switching, right? There's a whole bunch of science on how long it takes the brain to switch from one task to another, and then how much longer it is if there's 3 tasks and 4, and on and on. And you get to a point of diminishing returns where your brain is doing so much time switching from one task to another that you don't have the same focus on any of those tasks. So bottom line is multitasking decreases efficiency, right? It decreases quality because the brain evolutionarily, wow, that slid off the tongue, a lot better than myth busting. Brain is not designed to focus on more than one thing at a time, especially if they're complex things. So the second detractor from multitasking is a pathway to success is that it increases stress, right? Juggling multiple tasks can increase our stress levels, which can dramatically lead to a quick brownout or burnout, right? Brownout's when you kind of phase out and you go, man, I just can't do this anymore. I got to take a break. And then you come back, but you come back a little lower on the capability scale than you were. And eventually burnout is when you say, I really don't care anymore. This is not fun anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think a few of us have experienced both of those. And true burnout can take months to come back if you can ever come back. So we really need to want to manage that stress component. We'll talk a whole bunch about stress in a future podcast, but know now that when you're multitasking, you are naturally and intentionally increasing your stress level. And the third flows directly from both of the first ones. Not only do we decrease our efficiency and increase our stress, but we impair our concentration. Chronic multitasking, where we're managing home life, work life, outside life, social media life, anything, right, can impair our ability to concentrate on a single task effectively. Even when we say, okay, I want to focus, we can sit down for 3 or 4 minutes and our mind will start to drift. And if you wonder why that is, go back and look at how much multitasking you're doing outside of that one task. And maybe if you can decrease that a little bit, if you can chunk the work so you're not juggling so many things, you're going to be able to find a path forward and improve your focus and concentration, which is hugely important, right? Hugely important. So let's flip the coin and look at the good sides of multitasking. And frankly, I hate it. So it's hard for me to do the good sides of multitasking, but I'm going to do it anyway. So as long as the tasks are simple and they're well learned and things you're good at, you can increase efficiency. I'll give you that. For simple routine tasks, it'll allow you to accomplish more on multiple pathways in a shorter period. It will also potentially improve your adaptability and your flexibility. When you can juggle some things, you can realize that you can handle more and you can stay slightly more confident in fast-paced and dynamic environments. When things are coming at you fast and furious from multiple different directions, if you're a multitasker, you're probably a little more comfortable than a single-focused, narrow thing. And then the last thing it can do for you If you're a good multitasker, it can kind of improve your coordination skills, improve your time management, aid in your organization and your prioritization. If you're a bad multitasker, it could destroy all of those things, right? So far we've been through three things on why experience is not necessarily the road to success, but how it might be. The fourth one we've talked a little bit before about on a previous podcast on this idea about the difference between education and training and credentialing. So number 4 is this idea that experience leads to better credentialing, right? I've got this degree, I've got this certificate, I've got 5 years on task, I meet the minimum requirements for this job, right? Education, training, credentialing, I think are maybe less legitimate than they used to be. I think I no longer, for example, in our job advertisements for my company, list a college degree as a requirement for almost anything, right? Because I sort of believe that college degrees have diminished in their value for the business world. Formal education is not the only path to success. There are a lot of successful individuals who have thrived without formal education. I think there are an awful lot of people who become narrowly defined, who find themselves unable to function outside of an academic world because they've never had to come up against real world problems. So while I think there are some definite pluses to formal education, which we're going to get to in a minute, I think the second detractor here is that formal education is expensive and it's time consuming, right? Very costly, and there's really no guaranteed return on investment. It's why the big push right now for vocational training as opposed to a liberal arts education or something else. I think the one thing that's missing in that discussion is that any really good education program, all the way from kindergarten through postdoctoral work, and I've experienced all that, is that along the way, you've got to be able to apply it to the real world. It can't be an academic endeavor. And it's why some of these institutions that have publish or perish, that become cloistered echo chambers of academia are not doing us any favors when it comes to educating our children for success in the real world. But like I said, to be fair, let's look at some of the good things. And like I said, we also mentioned this in a previous podcast. Structured learning gives you the foundation for understanding, right? When you go through a program that has educational objectives and examinations and applications and all of those things that are on Bloom's hierarchy of learning, you learn how to learn anything. And when you learn how to learn anything, you can apply those same principles back to your daily routines, right? You don't have to be in a formal education on how to grow a bonsai tree. You can say, I'll apply some of these things and I'll learn on my own, and we'll bring everything together. So once you've been through a structured learning program, you know how it works, you can apply it somewhere else. The other cool thing about formal education and credentialing and training is that you run into cool people there, right? I'm a lifelong learner. I've always enjoyed being around other lifelong learners. And so the networking, I don't like that term, but the opportunities to meet other like-minded high achievers is a really cool side benefit to the experience gained from formal education and training. And then the last one, of course, here is you do get the credentials, right? If somebody says, I want a certified public accountant credential, and that's a minimum job requirement. If you don't have that, guess what? You're out of luck. So that brings us to the last one, the last myth, if you will, or partial truth, maybe better said, and that is working long hours experience will help you because you've learned to work hard. You can already see where I'm going to go with this one, right? There comes a point where working long hours gets to diminishing returns. Right? The longer I work in any given day, the less productive I become at the end of it. The second thing is that my health, my well-being, my stress levels, my inattention to other things can really grind on you chronically until it impacts your relationships, your health, any of the areas that you're not putting in the long hours on. When you're putting it in on something, you're taking it away from something else. And that leads to the natural third part of that, which is a neglect of your personal life. It could be your relationships, your hobbies. It could be your physical fitness routine. It could be picking up bad habits because stress leads to stress release things, alcohol, smoking, overeating. I could go into 100 different things. But you know what? I still like to work hard. And I still believe that when it comes down to a competitive environment, all the way back to my youthful days through whatever this is, the summer or autumn or winter of my life, whichever I feel in a given morning, I know that I am capable of long, hard work. Right? And when the time comes, I can outwork a lot of my competitors. I can do it, and it pays off in three specific ways. I can meet critical deadlines. When your publisher says, if you don't have this book in, man, you're going to the end of the queue and your book's not going to be published for 6 months, and you grit it out and you focus and you sit down and you do the work. You find out how to be efficient during those long hours. You find out when to take the breaks. You learn a lot about yourself through those long, hard hours if you do them smart. The second thing that putting in the hours and the time will do for you is it's going to give you an opportunity to grow faster, as long as you recognize when you reach that point of diminishing returns, right? It can also lead to faster career advancement. One thing I learned when I went from the military into the civil service with the federal government is if you wanted to see who was trying to get ahead, see who was there at like 1 minute after quitting time, because everybody was gone, right? They were just putting in their time. So I came from a background where you worked until the work was done. And so after about 3 or 4 weeks of that, somebody finally came up to me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting the work done." And they said, "Well, that's not how we do it around here. Quit trying to bust the curve." But it was recognized by some people as a good thing. And I was rewarded for that, I think, with some opportunities to advance. The other thing that putting time on task gives you when you get into a long immersion in a particular deep work project is it allows you to gain some insights that without the time on task and the undivided focus, you would never have seen, right? If you're always doing things quickly and efficiently, you really don't drill down into some of those amazing nooks and crannies that will reveal incredible insights and observations and problem-solving type techniques. So there's a lot of myths and there are a lot of benefits to those myths, but I think it's time for takeaways and a wrap-up. Takeaway number 1, don't be a one-trick pony. Great song by Paul Simon, especially if you're watching on video. Find new pathways to improvement and be willing to switch horses. It's not all about natural talent or experience equals wisdom or long, hard hours or whatever else we talked about here today. Be willing to switch off that pony and ride another one when the benefit outweighs the challenges and the risks. Number 2, seek balance or burnout's on the horizon. And having been through an episode of burnout or two, it's debilitating. It's high risk for your health. personally and professionally. So seek balance in the way you approach building your experience. Number 3, as your life, your goals, or your situations change, stay fluid to how you're growing or not growing, maybe even getting worse, and adapt. Right? We covered several things here today. We covered a lot of reasons why they're good and a few reasons why they're bad. And we've tried to give you a really balanced, nuanced approach to it. And number 4 is no matter where you are or who you are, grow where you are with the resources at hand, whatever it takes. Okay? And we're all capable of doing those things. So as we wrap up today's episode, again, milestone number 10, thanks for being with me. It's essential to remember that questioning the norm isn't about dismissing values, long-held values. It's about gaining a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the complexities of who we are and how we grow and how we get better and how we get worse. Experience and natural talent, multitasking, formal education and credentialing, working long hours, each has its place, each has its value. But however, as we discussed today, you need to look beyond the surface to recognize the limitations and the potential pitfalls, over-reliance on these aspects of how we get better. And as we part ways today, I encourage you to think about these ideas like always, reevaluate your personal and professional strategies, maybe find a more balanced and insightful way to achieve the goals you want to achieve. Well, that's a wrap of episode 10 of Only Human, where, as always, we believe in the power of one. So thanks for listening. Share what we're doing together. I'm Tony Kern. Please keep the feedback coming. See you soon.